just give it a little bit of time for the attendees to come into the room. Just give it a few more minutes to allow everyone to come into the room. And then we'll go on with our next presentation. This afternoon's presentations are more around how to prepare ourselves, both mentally and sort of within those community links. How do we form links and networks to assist us in those times when we may need a little bit of additional support, and how we can prepare ourselves as best we can, both psychologically and physically, I guess, in preparing for emergencies. So I'll just give it a few more minutes just to allow everyone in back from lunch. Okay, well, that looks like we might get started. So I'd like to introduce you today to Liz Catter and Helen McGregor from Australian Red Cross, and they're going to give us some talks on how to prepare ourselves for all sorts of emergencies and what other things we may need to consider outside of just the response. So thank you very much, Liz and Helen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed some of this morning's presentations. They're absolutely fantastic. And before I start, I would like to thank Blue Mountains Council and particularly Beck Southwell for organising this expo, which has so far been really informative. So thank you very much, Beck. My name is Liz Cater and my co-presenter is Helen McGregor. We're both volunteers with Red Cross, and we've been activated numerous times, including the Blue Mountains bushfires, which we all remember in 2013, and more recently the floods, which affected the Nepean Hawkesbury rivers, and of course last year, the 2019-20 dreadful bushfires that we've had. So as volunteers, we've been activated. I also would like to mention that we've been activated quite intensely with COVID support and quarantine support for people. So we don't just do storms, bushfires and floods. We also do all sorts of other things. What do we do in Red Cross is we support people mostly, and our sort of original role has been to be in evacuation centers and to help people who have had to evacuate their homes during storms and fires. But a lot of, almost most of our work now is centered around helping people to be prepared for emergencies, and also helping people to recover after emergencies, which of course that preparedness and that response function goes over a much longer period of time, and it is about that ongoing support and helping people. Basically, it is because if people are prepared for an emergency and they have get their thinking around what needs to be done before and during an emergency, they tend to recover very much better and their reactions are so much better. So first things first. And this is something that earlier in the day, Andrew has also been talking about. Think about what might happen. Prepare your mind. The better you are prepared mentally as well, the more able you are to cope with unfamiliar and unexpected and stressful events. And that could be just a personal emergency, or it could be bushfires, floods, and storms. Think about how you would feel in an emergency and how you can keep yourself calm in an emergency. So identify, have a bit of an idea about your own stress reactions, the kinds of things, how would you normally react when something stressful happens in your life under normal circumstances? And what do you do generally to keep calm and to control your thinking? They're the kind of things that if you translate that into an emergency, you will be much, much better off. So manage your thinking, calm your breathing, slow down, use some positive self-talk, and calm your breathing. Now, when we do these preparedness presentations, we can't tell you exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it, because each personal circumstances are different. But what we are trying to do is to give you some of the tools that will help you, it will help you, yourself, your family, and also your community. So they're the important things that we need to keep in mind. So Red Cross, also like Fire and Rescue and SES and RFS, have 4 steps. And those 4 steps are quite similar to what you've heard this morning as well. It is get in the know, find out, know where you can find the information that you need, and find out how that applies to you. Take action now to find those things out. Don't wait till the fire season, or don't wait till you hear that next week is going to be a heat wave. Find out about the things that you need to do now. The second step is to get connected. Your family, your friends, your own household, but also your neighbors. Get organized, know what you need to do and how you need to do that. And then finally get packing. So we're going to go quickly through each of these four steps. And I know we only have a short period of time, and I'd like to, at the end of it, give all of you a little scenario to just start thinking about what you might need to do. So let's go to step 1. First step is, where do you find the information? And again, this morning, we've talked a lot about various apps and information. So I'm going to be fairly short with this one. Bureau of Meteorology's got really good websites. And on your phones, you've got your apps as well. Live Traffic is a terrific app that you can put on your phone. But if you want more information, again, go to the website. The local council, and we've been talking about this a lot, Blue Mountains City Council will have a lot of information and a lot of resources. Look at those. Don't just think they're there for everybody else. They're there for you as well. We've already mentioned this morning your local radio, which is the dedicated emergency services radio. And it will give you, if something happens, up-to-date localized information on ABC 702. Obviously, TV and internet, and the one that I put in bold there at the bottom are your neighbors. That community, that local street, those neighbors are amazingly important for information, particularly if you are fairly new to an area and maybe you haven't lived in the Blue Mountains for very long and you don't really know what goes on. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to that retired couple that's been living there forever, you know, a couple of doors down. Talk to them and introduce yourself, get to know your neighbors and work together on what it is you might need to do in your particular community. There are some apps which are on the right-hand side. The Red Cross has got a terrific Get Prepared app, and we'll have another slide about that later. There is also, and I'd really want to recommend people load that onto their phones, the Emergency Plus app, because if you use that, it'll tell you the exact geolocation of where you are if you make a phone call to emergency services. And then there's all these various other apps that I would like to mention. And at the bottom is Resilience New South Wales. I don't think it's an app, but it is a really good website now that we can use. And I'm going to hand over now to Helen, because she's going to talk about the next couple of slides.
Okay, after we've done that, we move to step 2, which is continuing on with the idea of keeping connected. And that's a matter of just thinking who you really need to liaise with through any sort of an emergency. And the first point there is identifying who are the most likely people who will help you when an emergency happens, and getting in touch with them to just, I guess, make a pact with them that in times of trouble, they don't mind being the one that you call on, and vice versa. You may be their go-to person as well. And that extends also to, do you know other people in your neighborhood who might need help? Because one of the points which came home very strongly to me in all of the sessions this morning is that we're a country where most of, well, a great deal of our emergency support networks are volunteers. And that says to me that we all need to do our bit then. We all really need to chip in to help our neighbors in trouble too. So if you're home alone, how are you going to get away? If you can't drive, if something happens, you know, do you have a plan in place to be able to support yourself if nobody else is around to help you? And one of the previous speakers spoke very wisely about how are you going to organize your pets and make sure that you do have a plan in place that contends with all the different possibilities. Getting to know your neighbors in one way is, you know, planning for emergencies is a great way to get to know all your neighbors. So it's good to keep that in mind. And then one of the key things, I think, is to actually admit there are going to be times when you need help. And it doesn't come easily to a lot of us, but sometimes you really have to be very forthright in saying, you have a slight impediment, you can't carry things anymore, you're terrified of driving in traffic, whatever it is, you have to admit your limitations and actually ask for help. So, next one. Then, get organized. Good challenge for us all. And, you know, every time I see this slide, I realize just how important it is and how so many of us keep putting this off. We keep saying, oh yes, I'm going to make sure I photographed all my important documents. I'm actually really going to work out that I'll put them all on the cloud somewhere. I'm going to dig out all those original copies of documents that you know you have put away someplace safe, and that you know, you just have to make sure that you've got them. So in addition to having a location where your original paper documents may be stored and easily accessible for you to flee if you do need to evacuate, it is always a wise idea to get an electronic backup and to record them in a number of different sites, including a backup USB that can go with you, and perhaps share with some of the other family members. We were reminded this morning something that has become very important too, is don't forget to make sure you've got all of your insurance documentation backed up as well. So every time you listen to one of these presentations, even though we're all saying the same thing, we hear differently. So it's a really good idea to just double check every once in a while and methodically go through, learn all the new technology, which us oldies are always having to do, and just make sure that we're doing the best that we can to be organized to face any of the emergencies which are coming up. So we can move on.
Yeah, I'd like to actually add something to that, and that's a personal experience, something that I've done during the last COVID lockdown, because I realized that it's not necessarily the things like the important papers or your jewelry or the things of value that you value the most, but it might be, you know, your kids' toys or some furniture that you really attach to and that you really like. But the chances are you might not be able to put that in the back of your car when you're leaving if you have to evacuate. So I've actually gone right through my house and I've taken photos of all those things that I value, and that even if I lost them, I would then at least have a digital memory of them. Mm-hmm. So, and that might also be your grandma's recipes and those kind of things. If you lose them and you don't have them anymore, they're the ones that you think, I haven't got them anymore. So if you've taken photos and backed it up on the cloud, then that's a really good way of preserving at least some memories of those. So
good. Yeah, agreed.
Next one, make a kit. And that could be as simple as a backpack. It could be a box. It could be anything really. But one of the things that I would like to say about it is you have a kit, but there are always things that you can't really put in that kit and have ready with you. So stick a label on the top that tells you, don't forget your mobile phone and the charger. Don't forget to lock up the house and take your keys. Don't forget to put on those good trainers or those good shoes instead of the flip-flops that you've been wearing. So it's make a note of those last minute things that you need to do just before leaving the house and stick that on the top of the box. So you've got that there and you don't forget about them. What sort of things to pack? And that's going to be a really quick couple of slides here. For yourself, make a kit, have some toiletries, make sure that you wear good shoes, long-sleeved pants and long pants and long-sleeved shirts. Make sure you have your medication. Make sure you have your phone and the charger, your glasses. If you can't take your medicine, at least somewhere on the cloud, have saved a list of what medications you take. And then, of course, some basic water and food items. What is also important, and I think it's relevant to do, is to have a kit for your children. And one of the things that I would really like to encourage, and it's something that Red Cross have done through the pillowcase program, is to encourage children to make their own kits and to be in charge to an extent of their own kids. Babies can't do that, of course, but even toddlers and young children, primary school age children, age appropriate, can have their own kits. And if an emergency happens and you need to evacuate or go somewhere quick and the stress is really high, if those children have something to do that they can focus on, that is a really, really good thing. You give them age-appropriate control of their own kit, and that empowers them to deal with the situation in a positive way. And that will help their stress and also your stress. So that's what I would like to say about kits for children. We've already had a whole half-hour talk about a kit for your pets. And I think I will just add to that the importance of having that. And mind you, I've already taken a photo of my animals' vaccination certificate, which also has their microchip numbers on them. So that's really handy to have. What I would like to add to that is, in an emergency, if the cat and the dog are outside and something, like a bad thunderstorm happens, you're not going to be able to find them. They're going to be hiding. Two things there. Don't send your children out to go and get them, because they could put themselves in danger, and the animals will be scared, so they might bite or scratch. Secondly, make sure you bring your animals into safety well before the danger happens. Keep them inside and keep them secured well before. Animals, and that's something that Linda was already talking about, animals will sense quite often change in the weather before we do. Watch them, monitor them, and keep them safe. And then the final thing on that with the kit for pets is practice with them. Put your cat in its container, in its cat carrier, put it in the car with the dog, whatever you have, go around the block a few times so that they get used to getting into their safety area rather than resisting it. That's my bit for the cats. So we've got about 5 minutes left, which I'd like to use as a little bit of a thinking exercise for everyone. And this is just one of them. And Helen, would you like to read out what's on the scenario?
Yes, I'll do it. Actually, I love the idea of a scenario, because after lunch, we all need little prompts to keep us awake. So this is everyone's chance to actually think through a situation and try to put yourself in that situation. So the one that we've come up with, it's 7 p.m. and you are at home with your school-aged children. Your partner has not yet arrived home. The dog and the cat are outside, and it's been hot and dry all week. A sudden storm whipped up. It's gone dark, thunder and lightning. The children are doing their homework. You're preparing a meal. Suddenly you hear a massive crack. A tree near the house has been struck by lightning and is on fire. So here we go.
So you might like to, if you have a pen and paper, jot a couple of things down, or maybe a few comments in the Q&A box if you like. Should you do anything right now, or should you have done something already beforehand? Do you need to get ready to evacuate? Think about, what do you do to keep the children calm? What should you do about your pets? Who do you contact? Do you need to contact your partner? What do you think you might need to do in this kind of situation? And while you're thinking about it, you look outside and you can see that that fire has spread to the grass around it. How close is that getting to your house? And suddenly the electricity goes out. You want to leave with your children and the pets. You've got them all secured. You want to leave. You get them all into the car, but there's no electricity and you have an electric garage door. Do you know how to open your garage door if there's no electricity and you can't use that remote control? These are just some of the things you can think about. And what I would like to, what you could do if you want to, is when you're having a discussion within your family about preparedness, don't just talk about what you need to pack or what you need to do. Set a bit of a scenario and have a practice with your family. Or maybe just talk to your neighbors about it. Set a scenario and say, what would happen if this happened in our street? What could we do? Because a scenario tends to get you thinking and think about really practical things you might do, and also get your heart rate up. So you will then immediately you read this, you will then need to think about, how do I calm myself down? So these kind of things are a really useful tool to use if you wanted to practice being prepared. And just to finish, this is the Get Prepared app that you can find on the Red Cross website. It's a really good app you can put on your phone, and it helps you to think about all those things. It helps you to put in all that important information that you will need if you do need to leave home. Things that you need to think about is, what would be your trigger to leave home in an emergency? And again, things that were discussed this morning. How bad does it have to be before you leave home? Don't leave too late. Where will you go? How will you get there? And what will you take? So they're the really important sort of little bits of people that you would, things that you would need. And then finally, the Red Cross website's got some really good information in there and resources, and also some really good resources for children. And then what I'd also like to say is that Red Cross volunteers are always willing and able to maybe do a talk to a community group or so about being prepared. those talks can be anything from 20 minutes, half an hour, up to an hour. And in the past year, we've even been really clever and started to do these kind of things on Zoom. Or we could also come, once lockdown is over, maybe come to your local community group and have a chat about, in a little bit more depth, about what we can do to help you be prepared. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Liz and Helen. It's been really good to hear some of the other side of emergency preparedness. There's quite a few things there we can think about to take with us. Do we have any final questions or anything for Liz or Helen before we move on to the next session? You must have been very, very thorough and everything's been answered. So thank you very much again. And I'm sure we'll see more of you both in the coming years through some of our preparedness messaging that we're getting out. So thanks again for coming along, and I will catch everybody over in the next room. The next session will be done. It's a session held by our step-by-step recovery support services who are on the ground working at the moment within the bushfire and flood recovery across Blue Mountains, Lithgow and the Hawkesbury. So I'll meet you over in that next room, and thank you very much again, Liz and Helen.
Thank you.
Thank you.